Marie, and I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. I Last night I actually I hopped on late and frankly felt so exhausted, and I'm feeling a little bit exhausted myself. Um, but I will say there's something about being here with you all tonight that because something just happened before I joined with you, and it's happening in real time. And one of the things that I feel really committed to throughout this conversation is that anytime that I feel like I start getting distracted, I just want to bring myself back here in this present moment because honestly, it's easy for me to kind of trail off, and then I start having this almost like 30-party perspective over what's happening. And I was talking to someone tonight because I was with my family and we were all having a wonderful time celebrating my sister for her birthday. And it was a moment where all of a sudden I had been so present in that moment where suddenly it was like I left my body and suddenly became self-conscious and started watching as a non-active participant, watching Christine Marie along with her siblings and family. And it was so interesting because there is a very distinct difference between self-conscious and self-awareness. And we understand, all of us, that moment of when we effectively awaken to effectively that kind of concept of being naked, whether we're 12 or 20 or 3, we remember that moment in time where it's, oh, I don't fit in, or oh, I feel awkward, or oh, it's just that brief moment, ever so slightly, that can just take us out of the present moment. And suddenly, we're an audience member watching film of our life rather than being an active participant, rather than actually being the ones to live. So immersed, so engaged, so present. And when we're living so in the present moment, we're not aware of even 5 seconds ahead or 5 seconds previous. We're here right now. And so what I really want, I'm really seeking to continue to cultivate this. I've really been working towards this for the last couple of years. And every time I kind of feel myself veering off, seeking to come right back. But in this conversation specifically, I want to do that because last night I actually realized I kind of felt myself drifting a little bit. And I think it was due to being tired. But I didn't actually identify it in the moment. And then what happens is that I feel like I kind of come out of alignment and I come out of that authentic connection with myself. And then I suddenly become awake and aware. And I'm like, I don't make myself do this. And then I'm not actually being fully integrous and fully truthful to and with you. So I want to commit to that in these solo episodes, that when I feel like I'm coming ever so slightly off and out of alignment, I just say it if I need to, or I just bring myself right back, because I think that that's actually really helpful when we talk about doing these shows in real time, being live where we stutter over our words or we have to repeat something because it didn't come out right the first time. We can't edit it out. And so much of what we're observing and experiencing in and around us is watching a filtered life. So much of it, we don't even know it's real because AI can create it as well. So there is something about the live authentic connection that is facilitated. So that's number one. Number two, with this whole concept of being integrous and just really allowing for the real-time processing and kind of the exposing nature that is having a live show, I want to talk about something that happened literally just 30 minutes ago. I was in the car with someone very close to me, and we were having a conversation that was uncomfortable for us both. They were talking about a topic that I'm not the most familiar with, but they're very passionate about it. I grew up with a completely different perspective and a completely different understanding. And so we've had a conversation similar in the past, and it's always been something that we have to engage with a trepidation of sorts, because it just is, it's tender, it's a raw subject. They're very impassioned and I don't have a ton of knowledge, and everything that I do have knowledge about is and was kind of handed to me. And I just want to pause there, because how many times do we engage in conversations like this where so much of our opinion is formed based on what other people have said, and really not diving deep into developing a passion of our own. Part of me, this has a little bit, probably needs some dynamism to it. But man, I don't want to sit and talk about things to a very deep and large extent if I don't have a strong point of view that I've cultivated and nurtured. Otherwise I just want to listen. I want to learn, and I want to go do my research. I want to go hear from multiple people and hear from both sides of the aisle. And I'm not talking politically. I'm talking about anything, any topic. On the Knowing Show, we talk a lot about our core intelligences and how our emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, intellectual intelligence, physical intelligence, every part of us has something to contribute to our lives, but how much of those levers of each intelligence is pulled by our subconscious that has been informed by someone other than us. And so then it becomes our radical responsibility to go inward, understand what is my current level of intelligence in each regard, where is the source and who is the source, and then now let me go refine that. So that's part of knowing. This whole brand of knowing is so, oh gosh, it's so much about going to the roots and understanding the state of what is, why is it there, and then let me now go and create something new. Let me actually go and allow for newness to take place and give birth to something that's completely either original to me, to actually what I think and believe based on my experience and based on, yes, what I've learned from other people, what I've been and had revealed to me, that now I can offer something new and truly of origin. And isn't that so exciting? Isn't that why we're here in the first place? And so this conversation was definitely tricky. We were sitting in the car having this conversation, and we concluded, and because frankly I needed to do the Knowing Show, and I felt upset, and I was just sitting. Frankly, I was thinking about what do I want to talk about tonight, and I didn't feel peaceful, and I don't like staying in that place. And I actually knew, I was like, I can't go do the Knowing Show until I am at a place that I feel aligned. I cannot. So frankly, my disconcerted, what my emotional intelligence was revealing to me was a state of disconcertion. And so now that I can kind of have my antennas up, something's wrong. How do I go inward and kind of analyze the situation and myself based on the tools and practices that I've put in place in alignment with this emotional intelligence? And how do all these other intelligences come into play? So one, I know on the IQ level, the intellectual intelligence, I haven't done a whole lot of research on this. I know that that's something that I need to, and I am slowly going and continuing to learn and cultivate my own opinion and perspective on. Spiritually, right? Because okay, so y'all, I said this yesterday. This is so important, and I need to really meditate on this. One aspect of truth in one realm of intelligence likely has a through line for all the others. So if I don't know something about something, let's say, on the IQ level, how then do I need to take that awareness and bring it to light on the EQ, on even the physical, on the spiritual? So how does this awareness in one regard translate all the way through to the others? Well, if I don't know much about the subject, what does wisdom look like and dictate for how I engage emotionally on that topic? What does it look like for me, even on a physical level? Like, how am I going to physically show up? Because y'all, there is an energy, and there's a lot of beauty in the way that we can engage on a physical level that can really make someone feel safe and heard and seen just by how we're posturing our body. Are we facing them? Are we oriented towards them? Or are we kind of sitting across, like facing the other direction, angled away? I heard this years ago, and I thought it was just helpful for me to understand social cues. I heard that if a man orients his body towards a woman, he is interested. And when he orients away, he's not. So effectively, if you're sitting at the bar and you've got two people sitting shoulder to shoulder, there is a lack of interest, a lack of ability to engage even because they're not physically looking at each other in the eye. And frankly, there's something about why men are able to have a better conversation with their partner when they're driving because they're able to look straight ahead. And so, frankly, you can have harder conversations while you're driving. And I think I heard that from the man's perspective, but I'm sure even from the woman's perspective too. So, all that to say, our physical body language is incredibly important to analyze when we're having this conversation. And so, whatever comes up that becomes of chief and first awareness in one regard of those intelligences, we then need to carry the through line. Okay, how does this impact all the others? If I recognize something on the IQ level, how does that impact my emotional intelligence, etc.? So, in this moment, I'm up here in my little condo, and I'm feeling this unrest. I don't like how that conversation ended. It didn't end poorly, but I don't like where I am right here, right now. And so, based on the work that I've done to understand the physical sensation that I'm having in my body of discomfort, alerting me that there's an emotional disconnect and that something's not right on an emotional level, then it reveals, okay, so then what does that say on the IQ level? I know that I don't actually really understand this topic. And so what I was able to realize, and it was actually really, really important, what I realized is that because I didn't have a strong grasp intellectually on the topic, I felt embarrassed emotionally. And the way that that kind of shows up is, and frankly, this is how the spiritual component plays in. On the spiritual, on the spiritual intelligence side of things, growing up in the church, it was kind of like we just turn away from anything that is unpleasant. And so I have an avoidance tendency, but it's really rooted in embarrassment and shame around the intellectual topic that I can't fully grasp. And the way that that physically shows up is I draw back. So it's just so important. We understand the through lines of how one small element of our lives shows up in every single one of our parts of us. And it so dramatically impacts our kids, our partners, our business partners and romantic partners, our family, our state and stasis around one little bit of discomfort can completely throw us all out of whack. And if we don't know when we're not aligned, man, we can really do damage in our relationships, and it can be permanently so. So after I realized this, I was like, okay, that's my intellectual capability or lack thereof around this topic leads to emotional embarrassment on the EQ, leading to avoidance predicated in my experience on the religious side and spiritually. And then that physically manifests as avoiding that person and pulling back and kind of going into withdrawal. So I intentionally came out of my condo and pursued that person that we were just having this conversation. And I just said, hey, I'm with you in this, and I'm actually feeling really embarrassed right now, and I really need your help. And one of the things that I've realized in the last 4 months or so, I can maintain heightened emotions while, and I'm saying this in air quotes, while being vulnerable. But it is, so for example, I can come to, my sister and say, "I am so pissed at you right now." And I'm being vulnerable, I'm telling her how I feel. But is that really? I'm so angry. People always say that anger is a secondary emotion, and there's a lot of truth there because when you peel back the layer even more, am I really actually afraid? Do I actually have fear around loss? Is there fear around what might happen if they find me out or see me and I'm actually exposed? Is there fear of them not liking me? So when we feel these kind of secondary or tertiary emotions, what is really going on underneath? And what I have found in specifically in relationship on a familial level, when I say I'm feeling embarrassed, it's like all the walls come down. It's like little Christene is coming out and it is vulnerable, and I feel I hate saying it, but y'all, it's like there's no way for us to maintain the walls that we're building when we actually voice embarrassment. It's almost like I'm in me saying I'm embarrassed, it's like I'm taking my armor off. And then the other person, I have yet to experience someone taking advantage of that. You know, every person that in my family specifically, where I've said, "I'm feeling really embarrassed right now." Me even admitting that, it softens me. And so there might be another tactic or angle for you that just immediately softens, but the goal is how are they being a mirror for me? How do I change? What is this discomfort I'm feeling, this annoyance or frustration I'm feeling right now towards them, what is that reflecting to me about me? You know, the biblical text says, "Take the log out of your own eye, and then you can see clearly to remove the speck in your brother's." And every single time I have experienced any kind of conflict in my business, with customers, with my family, every single time there is something for me to learn when I look at the mirror. So everything external, everything horizontal is serving as a reflection for how I need to align vertically. And that doesn't mean that there's not responsibility on their part. That doesn't mean that there's not consequence for their action by any means. But what it does do is that in order for the whole conversation tonight that we're having is what is the predecessor of peace? And the predecessor was looking in the mirror and recognizing the truth. So tonight, the only way I could even hope to hop on here was to move back into alignment, but I can only ever move into alignment if I know the truth and if I'm willing to look in the mirror and then do the work to then move into alignment. Knowing is the very first step. And knowing, this is the thing about knowing that is so exciting to me is that if we truly know, we cannot help but take action. It's again, with the whole, little biblical story, there's this narrative around this gentleman finding he's in the field digging, and he finds this treasure, and he is so excited about it. It's this massive treasure, it's gonna change his entire life. So, naturally, he goes and takes radical action. He sells everything he has because, man, that treasure in that field, he needs to buy that field. And so he sells everything he has, takes all that money, goes and buys the field, and thus he secures the treasure. So if you and I truly look in the mirror, we truly come to know the truth, we cannot help but be changed. Change is just the natural output. For every input is an output. So the input of that knowledge thus allows for a new output. But we have to do the work to truly know. And this is what let's talk inputs and outputs for a few minutes here, because when we talk about inputs, it's not just inputs from an external nature. Inspiration can be an input. We can self-generate and self-perpetuate inputs, which is so I haven't thought about this concept for a little bit. The very first time I realized this was actually on a show with a dear friend of mine, Dmitry Smirnov. And we were having a conversation and it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, intuition is an input. And that, man, that changes everything. Because how many of us are outsourcing our spirituality, our intellectualism to everyone else. And look, tell me what to think. Tell me how to feel. Tell me what to believe in every single regard. So if we eliminate our outsourced inputs and allow for our inputs to be self-generated through revelation, through inspiration, through creation, it's so cool. Now our outputs are truly sourced from within. And yes, then we add two layers from what we're hearing from what other people say. I went to this conference at the end of June with my parents. And that was the very first time I was writing Knowing, and I finished it middle of June. And in Knowing, I talk about spiritual intelligence a little bit. I mean, so much of this book is about knowing the soul and knowing emotional intelligence. I plan to have other books written for the other intelligence, but this book is really about the EQ. And so I was seated right in front of the speaker. And for about the first 20 to 30 minutes, he is talking and he says the word spiritual intelligence. It was the first person I've ever heard use that term, and man, I just everything in me lit up, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And it felt like validation on an internal revelation, and it was like, "Yes, that. Oh my gosh, yes, that's right, and that's so exciting. I'm on the right track." So external, the horizontal, is so beautiful to supplement and add to the foundations which are being built through inspiration, intuition, revelation, and creation from our own self-perpetuated inputs. But if we're solely outsourcing every single aspect of who we are to those around us, we cannot help but look like everyone else, be a non-functional human, and a non-person, you know? And that's actually, I think, what's most scary. I said non-functional. I think the thing that's most scary is that I actually functioned for 28 years pretty well as a non-person. So I think I need to scratch that. I think that actually we can be functional, but are we really living? Like, so then it comes down to, okay, let's define terms. What is a functioning human? Is it living as a robot? Because y'all, the thing that differentiates us from these robots is our soul, is our spirit, is our physical body, and this is where it's interesting, intellectualism. The IQ is so easily replaced by the robots, other than that which is self-perpetuated inputs from our own ability to self-generate and create in terms of intellectual mind thinking. And so these are the core elements, these intelligences, which are so important to cultivate, are the very thing that differentiates us from these bots. So when you talk about a functional human, I would beg to say it's the functional human piece, right? The human piece is the differentiator there. It demarcates it because these bots are very functional. But if we want to be a functional human, it is the person who is cultivated and advanced and led from within in each one of those intelligences where they are internally sourced rather than externally. Their inputs are sourced from inspiration, intuition, revelation, and creation. And creation is going to be the output. Y'all, it's so exciting because when I had that moment of looking in the mirror, realizing that I was feeling this discomfort in my emotions, right, in my soul, and it was predicated and tied to the lack of the intellectual knowledge around the topic that I was talking with my friend about, and then seeing how that led to avoidance and how actually my spiritual upbringing really had ties to that. Well, it immediately dismantled everything. It's like all of this I was building, and I wanna play with this analogy a little bit, so bear with me. It's like each one of those aspects from my intelligences was building something. Oh my gosh! Okay, this is it. It was building and forming a brick. I don't think I've talked about this on the Knowing Show. This is so exciting. In my book, Knowing, I talk about how each one of us exists behind a wall, but our wall is formed by bricks, which constitute unprocessed experiences and also, thus, unprocessed emotions. And so when we look at this thing that is being built from the span of time, from the 5 minutes between getting out of the car, going into the bathroom, and about to start my show, there was a 5 minutes elapsed, hardly any time whatsoever. But within that 5 minutes, my IQ was starting to activate and give intelligence and data based on not knowing something and the fear there and the discomfort there. The emotion is starting to kick in and adding to the discomfort, the again, fear, the spiritual intelligence is starting to kick in and add to it and saying, "Oh, you know what happens when we don't know. We actually need to avoid it. We need to look away." And then the physical manifestation that's adding to all of this is building and what constitutes as a brick. The physical is pull back emotionally, mentally from that person who causes me discomfort. So thus, a brick is forming that then is solidified on what then ends up becoming a wall behind which we exist and ultimately separates us, causing further disconnection from those people that we love. And then we wonder why we can't communicate. Well, it's because the discomfort I felt in this conversation, I'm choosing to allow for it to form into a brick because I'm actually not willing to voice I feel embarrassed. But that simple word, that simple phrase of I'm going to come and be exposed with you and let you see my cards and show you that this is highly uncomfortable for me and I actually don't feel really embarrassed right now. And I even said this, I was like, I feel like a little girl right now. And I really hate feeling this way. And so immediately what it does is that it almost takes all of the energy that out of the brick. What was beginning to form, immediately it dissipates because I'm sitting with the discomfort. I'm giving voice to it. Shame cannot hide when light is exposed, and the light is truth itself. So if we want peace, friends, the predecessor of that is truth. And it's truth around what each one of these intelligences is telling us. Our intelligence doesn't mean what it has to say. When we think of this boardroom of directors for each intelligence, it doesn't mean it's right. But what it does mean is that it has data and it has something to offer us, and that it is our job, our radical job, our radical responsibility to go and listen. So with that,